Alright, Redneck Gunworks, Wyndham trigger job.
Redneck Gunworks!
Basically, here's the deal. And we talked about this for a little bit, the whole trigger thing. And so we were looking at two-stage triggers. We were looking at, the Geisley triggers. We looked at CMC. We looked at Timony. And I got to tell you, by far, the Texas boys, CMC, made a really good trigger. Target price on that was about $195. I think we found it for what, $165 at some of the private shops around here.
Yeah,
so $165. So not a bad deal. So we're real interested in doing that one. But what we decided on this one is, you know, you can do a drop-in trigger, and anybody can do a drop-in trigger for $200. Instead of doing a drop-in $200 trigger, if you're so inclined, and you got a little bit of mechanical skill, you can actually pick up the J&P Enterprises spring set for your trigger. This will take your 7.5, 8 pound regular, mil spec type trigger and turn this into a 3.5 pound trigger. Now the deal of this is you can buy these, and yes, you can make it a 3.5 pound trigger, but it's still going to have a lot of take up in it. It's going to have some creep in it, and it's just going to have that gritty, nasty feel. So what we're going to show you today is how to take that gritty feeling out of it. How to take some of the creep out of it. Now it's still going to have the same amount of take up. We're not taking any of the take up out of it, and I'm not going to do a video on how to take up the take up. It's just, there's gunsmithing school for that. So go do that. If you want to get that involved with it, go do that. But gunsmithing school is going to cost you a whole lot more than $200 for a drop-in trigger. So that's my advice. 2 cents, there you go. You still owe them $4.98 at Starbucks. All right, guys, here we go. Basically, what we're looking at here is we're going to pop out these pins. There's 2 pins. There's one for the hammer and one for the sear. And this being a Wyndham, they're really well made, and they are really tight in there. Or at least the hammer spring was. So here we go. There's 3 parts in here. What you're going to have is you're going to have the hammer and the sear. We've actually got another video that we're linking to in this that'll show you kind of how all of that goes together. But what we're doing right now is we're actually going to pull these springs off. And you got 1, 2, and a 3rd spring right there. You can pull that out. So there's actually a little spring that goes in there, and a little spring that goes over this. All right, so there we go. Our little springs. All right, now this spring has a little fat end on it. It has a skinny end and a fat end. You're actually going to take this little fat end and right down in here, I don't know if you can see that, but right down in there, there's an indentation. And so what you do is you take the fat end of that, and I like to take it and kind of, hang on, let me get rid of that. What I do is I take it and just push it down in there, and then really mash it and get it down in there so it sets, because the last thing you want is for that thing to fall out while you're working on your trigger. And then we're going to take these other 2 and we're going to set them off to the side. One thing we are looking at is our hammer and sear engagement. This hammer looks to have a really, really good ledge there. It's really nice. It's got some grit in there, but we're not going to worry about that so much right now. What we're really going to worry about is all of that right there on that. So we're going to use some really, really, really rough stuff. Not kidding. Or I am kidding, actually. We're going to use 2000 grit sandpaper. We actually just literally rub this on that 2000 grit sandpaper. And see how it starts taking all that off? Because see, there's a lot of machine chatter marks going across there. I don't know if you can see that, but a lot of machine chatter marks where they milled the end of that bit, and the more of these they mill, the more that bit gets just worn down, and it makes more chatter marks in there. So we're going to get rid of all those chatter marks. And so we're literally just dragging that. and we're dragging it flat across the surface, okay? You're gonna get a really good purchase on it, and then you're just gonna drag it across, okay? Now, we're not resetting the engagement on this. We're not doing any of that. All we're doing is just buffing that face on that. That's all we're doing. That's all we want to do. And see how nice and pretty that's getting? It's getting really, really clean. So here we go. Okay, there we go. See, it's kind of clean. There's a little bit of a mark right in there, and we're going to work on getting that out real quick. But all right, so there it is, all nice and clean. Now, this edge right here is really sharp. Where this edge and this edge is right here, it's really, really sharp. And I don't know if you can see this. I don't know if the video is going to pick it up that much, but there's also kind of a little indentation type mark right in there. And so what we're going to do is we're actually going to take on that surface, we're actually going to kind of put this on here and pull against that surface, and then at the end of it we're just going to round it out just a little bit. So we're going to pull like this, and then we're going to round out. And what that's going to do is it's going to shape that edge, so it'll take some of the grit out of it. Now, this is 2000 grit sandpaper, so we're not moving a whole lot of metal, okay? Matter of fact, we're barely moving metal. You should be able to still feel a nice engagement there, but it shouldn't be like super, it shouldn't be like knife sharp. It should be just kind of a rolled over edge. You should feel it, not see it. If you see a rolled over edge, you screwed up your trigger. Go to midway.com or midwayusa.com, spend $14 and get you another one of these, okay? Because you rolled it over too much. Okay, that's it. That's your trigger job. I mean, that's your do-it-yourself home trigger job. Look, we're going to put this spring back on here. This is the, I'm sorry, no it's not. That's the old spring. Boy, we're fixing to have a very disappointed guy here at the shop, aren't we? He's going to be like, I thought it was 3.5 pounds. Still feels like 7. And it was going to be 7. So here we go. We'll just pop this spring on there and get it over the lip there. All right, we're going to put our disconnector back in where it goes, like that. Drop that back down in there. Get it all set. Get our pin pushed back in. And these are always so much fun. Oh. You know, you do enough of these trigger jobs, and what you learn is that these pins never go in when somebody's watching. I could be here at the shop by myself and just slide it in. I'm like, oh wow, that was so awesome. And on the next video, I'm going to be so good at that. And then the next video comes along, and I suck. So here we go. We're going to put this bad boy on. And somebody's screaming right now going, that's the wrong way. It goes on the other side of the hammer. There you go. See, we got it in there the right way now. So here we go. We're going to pop that down in there like this. Put this other pin in. And you just saved yourself $200. Did that feel like $200 worth of labor? I know at the car shop, $200 worth of labor. Kind of looks like that. You go to the Harley shop, that's about $200 worth of labor time, right? Mm-hmm.
About 10 minutes, $200.
Yeah, 10 minutes, $200. It's of course that's the old adage. You know what HD stands for, right?
$100.
$100. All right, guys. We believe in truth in advertising, so we got to share all the information. Fact of the matter is we got it installed with everything the way it was. We did clean up the the face of the trigger sear. We also cleaned up the face of the hammer sear. Now let me caution you on that, and that is, by saying we cleaned them up, that just means that we polished them, okay? That is a hardened surface, and if you remove any, if you remove too much metal, you get past the hardened surface, and you've ruined your part, okay? We don't want to do that, because those surfaces are hardened so that stuff will hold up, and you don't accidentally go out one day and this thing just fires off a whole clip, you know. I'm sorry, a whole magazine for all you tactical appropriate people. So here's the deal. We'll show you what it is. We're putting this in the right place on the trigger, which is the midpoint on the trigger. We are going to be pulling on this scale at a rearward motion, not pushing down on the hammer. And that one she fired at 6.5 pounds. That one 5 3/4 pounds. Let's see if we can get a good straight pull, because I feel like I'm pulling it off to the side, so hang on. 5.5 pounds. Five and 3/4 pounds. Now, just to be fair, this was advertised as being a 3.5 pound set. This trigger, man, this Wyndham trigger was a really, really heavy trigger. We didn't test it, but we believe that it was 8 to 9 pound trigger. I mean, somebody even said it felt like it was a 14 pound trigger. So it was a heavy, heavy, heavy trigger. So true enough, it did reduce the trigger to a workable amount. As a matter of fact, reworking those surfaces and everything, the trigger just, man, it feels better. I think if I were to work those surfaces a little better, I could probably get it down to a solid 5 pounds on every pull, but I'm not going to. Just because I've already worked those surfaces, and I think if I work them more, I'm probably just going to end up ruining it. So we're not going to do that. There is one other thing that I want to test, just in all fairness, to make sure that we did this right. I am going to let it do the old hold the trigger till it resets. Okay. Now, we're going to try it just to see where she's going to fire at. 5 3/4 pounds. So, that seems to be what it is. It did improve it. I mean, it really did improve it. It feels a whole lot better, but it didn't go to 3.5 pounds. So, J&P, nice job. We like the springs, but not the 3.5 pounds that was advertised, at least not on this Wyndham. So, we're going to try it on another firearm and see if it will actually do the 3.5 pounds. So, all right, we'll see. Okay, hey, just in the interest of fairness, here's what we're doing. We put the original springs back in, okay? Now, this is the trigger worked, the surfaces worked, but with the stock spring, okay? So here we go. We're going to put that right where it needs to go, and he's pulling the whole sled.
I had to pull the sled, dude.
It went all the way through.
Oh, golly. Here, let me show them. I don't know if you can see that, but it maxed out our scale. This thing only goes to 8 pounds, and he was literally pulling the sled on this. So I got to tell you, Wyndham Weaponry springs for their stock triggers,
Or maybe even the sear
suck.
points, or
Maybe that's what it. Well, we redid the sear points, so I got to tell you, the fact that we knocked it down from 8 plus, I mean, it stops at 8, and it took it a whole bunch past 8. So, I mean, I'm saying that that's probably going to be 10, 12 pounds that trigger was, and the fact that we got it to 5.5 pounds with what was supposed to be a 3.5 pound trigger set. So I kind of take back what I said about the J&P Enterprises trigger springs. They reduced it by half. So I'm pretty happy about that. I think in another gun that the sear engagement's not maybe so positive, or maybe it's not so tough. You know, this gun's been really, really tight. So maybe after a couple hundred rounds, this thing's going to loosen up. So what we're going to do is we're going to let this gun cycle, and we're going to come back and revisit this in a later video and just give you an update. But J&P springs did reduce. It wasn't quite 3.5 pounds like what they advertised on it, but it was over half of what the stock trigger was. And for $13, I'll take that every day. $13 to get a 5-pound trigger versus the $200. Most people in combat shooting shoot a 4.5 to 5.5 pound trigger anyway. So what we've got is a really good combat trigger for $13. It's not the precision trigger that we thought it was going to be, but it is a good combat trigger. So win-win. If that's what you're going for, hey, J&P triggers or J&P trigger springs, drive on, get them, put them in your gun. I'd put my name on them. Hey guys, as you can see, we've already got this thing broken down. We did that so that we could do the trigger group. I'm pretty happy about how the trigger group turned out. We got the trigger group down to, here we're going to measure it here real quick. 3.25 pounds, right at 3.25 pounds. That is just phenomenal, considering that all we had to do was buy a spring set for 11 bucks plus shipping. So we're talking about what, 15 bucks, 16 bucks delivered to your house. You swap the little spring set out, and of course do the little tips and tricks that I showed you on the trigger earlier in the video. You'll be able to see some really good results on that. Hey guys, we just finished the trigger job on 2 of the AR platforms. We used the DPMS LR308 platform and the Wyndham Weaponry AR-15, particularly their Carbon 15 platform. Just 2 different diverse rifles, but same platform. So we were hoping to get really uniform results, but we didn't. What we ended up getting was on the LR308, we ended up getting the 3.5, 3.75 pound trigger. We were pretty happy about that. On the AR-15 from Wyndham, the best that we got was 5.5 pounds, 5.75 pounds. That really wasn't what was kind of advertised when we bought the spring set and all of that. But we're not faulting the spring manufacturers, because there was some outside stuff that we think was going on with that Wyndham gun. We tested that Wyndham gun, as you saw earlier in the video, and it was off the chart. My little scale only goes to 8 pounds, and we literally pulled it all 8 pounds and was pulling the gun rest that it was in. So we believe that trigger to be upwards of a 10-pound trigger from the factory. It was super positive engagement on it, and so we think that was some of the problem. So what we're saying here is, depending on what weapon system you get and how the trigger starts out, is going to very much affect how the trigger job ends up. With the DPMS, the trigger wasn't too bad. We had it at about 7.5 pounds, and we dropped it to 3.5, 3.25, just like what we thought. Like I said, it just varied so much. What I would tell you is this. If you're on a super tight budget and you have the ability to do your own trigger job, yes, it's going to improve your trigger. By how much, we can't guarantee that. And I'm not going to guarantee that, because in the results that we had, it varied. And it varied quite a bit. I mean, you're talking about a 2-pound variance. Doesn't sound like a whole lot, but when you're talking triggers, 2 pounds is a lot. If I wasn't on a budget and I had the money to spend, I would get a drop-in trigger. You know, there's just so many of them out there. You've got the CMC starting out at I think we saw one at a gun show for $165. I think there's a dealer here local that sells them for about $185. I've seen them on Amazon, which we'll put some links down below to some of these people that you can buy them from, for like $199. You can get a Timony trigger all day long for $199 to $249. You can get a Geisley trigger starting out in the $190 and going on up into, you know, $250, $300, depending on what level of trigger you want to go to. I would just go that route for a couple of different reasons. And one is, if you alter a stock trigger too much, you're going to have to reset the engagement, which means that you're going to have to reset the disconnector, which you have to really know what you're doing. You mess up between 5 and 7 thousandths between those two, and what you've done is you've ruined your gun and made it a very dangerous gun, which unfortunately is the effect most times that you screw up a trigger job. So definitely, when you view this video, follow what we did in the video. Follow the kind of the guidelines for safety, and that is, don't remove metal. It's okay if you polish it to give it a smoother surface, but make sure that you're not removing metal. Make sure that you're not changing the surface. Make sure that you're not changing the engagement. And then, you know, swap those springs out, and you'll get a good smooth trigger at a lower spring pressure, I guess is what we're trying to say. So, hey, good luck with it. We certainly want you to go out there, have a good time. We want you to be able to work on your own guns to the level that you feel safe doing it. Man, we hope to see you out at the range. We hope to see you out hunting. We hope to see you out doing something in the outdoors. And we'll see you out there. Thanks.
Redneck Gun Works!